everyone. Welcome to Credential Up Houston. My name is Margaret Ford Fisher. Many students at colleges and universities enroll in creative writing courses, aspiring to become great writers and authors. Yet somewhere along the way, some of them become discouraged. And then there are others who want to write, but do not know how to begin. Well, in this show, I want to help renew the passion for writing and share some thoughts with you on how to begin. Today, our guest is Mrs. Celeste Nortfleet, an award-winning author who has written over 35 novels that have been published by major traditional publishing companies. We will discuss her journey to success in becoming a nationally acclaimed novelist. Ms. Nortfleet, thank you so very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a pleasure.
Well, you are so welcome, and congratulations to you on all of your successes. You know, we all have a story to tell, and I think that's really critically important to say up front. So I'd like for you to tell us how you got started on the journey to writing novels.
Not a traditional journey, not a traditional path. I did not want to be a writer. I did not particularly care for reading. I read when I had to, but all my life I wanted to be an artist. So I went to art college. I became an artist. I worked in an advertising agency as an art director. I worked in a corporation as an art director, and I loved being an artist. But then my husband and I moved to Virginia, and we had a 1-month-old son who moved from Philadelphia to Virginia, and I became a stay-at-home mom, and I was bored. So I did some graphic work, but still I was bored. So I started reading, and I was a New York Times list snob. I read everything on a New York Times list. And then I read a book by Joanna Lindsey, and I discovered romance. I instantly fell in love with romance. I was in a bookstore one day with my stroller, and I saw Black romance. I had no idea it existed. I got my first Black novel. I believe it was Frances Ray. Then it was Donna Hill. Then it was Candace Porch. Then it was Brenda Jackson. And then it just went on from there. And I became a romance love. I loved romance. Couldn't get enough of it. Still had no desire to write. Then I got a book that was so bad. And I said, you know what? I can do better. And I went into the library, the public library. There, I learned everything I could about the business of writing and the direction of writing. There are books on how to be there's actually a book called How to Be a Romance Writer for Dummies. It's a great book. And how to do a sentence, how to write a noun. How to write a sentence, what nouns, verbs. I went to the very beginning, the basics of writing. And I went from there, and I wrote my first book. I wrote my second book. I sent them both to BET Books. Didn't hear anything. So every book I ever read said, keep right on writing. So I did. I kept writing. I got a phone call from an editor who said, I loved your books. I want to buy your books, but we need you to write a Christmas story in 6 months. I did. That started me. My first novel was released in 2002. It was entitled Priceless Gift. And I've been writing ever since. I love it.
You know, this is such an inspiring story for me to hear you say that, because when you think about the stay-at-home moms particularly, and that's one piece that you touched on in your comment, who are taking care of their children, and they feel as though maybe, you know, they would like to do something a little bit more. This would be an encouragement for them as well to think about that possibility of writing. So I'm wondering, what were some of the barriers that you encountered, and how did you overcome them as you began writing?
Well, my barriers are basically self-inflicted. I put barriers up because I kept telling myself, I'm not a writer. I didn't go to school for writing. I have never taken a writing course, and I still still have troubles with those same thoughts, but I have to keep pushing them back. I didn't go to school for writing. I went to school to be an artist. But now in my mind, I remind myself that my artistic abilities comes out through my words. When I describe a scene, I see that scene, I paint that scene in my mind and let the words come from there.
This is interesting because in effect, while you did not go to school to study creative writing, you did go to a school of sorts because you self-taught, you went to the library,
Oh,
you read,
yes.
you researched, and so you were able to get the information that you needed, obviously, which is also very impressive. Now, you were a fashion illustrator. I
Yes.
understand you went to the
Yes.
Moore School of Art.
More
So
School of
you
Art and
have that
Design.
formal education
Mhm.
also, which helped to give you a frame of reference
Yes.
about where to go to research to get the information that you needed. So
Yes.
this is wonderful. So is there a certain frame of mind that you have to adopt when you sit to write? Do you need to be in a specific setting? How do you avoid interruptions when you write?
I started writing and had 2 young kids. There is no avoiding interruptions. I was a mom, but you learn to move around them. My kids were in school when I first started writing. So I have young kids in school. I put them on a school bus. I wrote. And then when I took them off the school bus, I didn't write anymore. My husband came home from work. I was a mom. I was a wife. We did dinner together, no problem. After everyone settled down for the evening, I went back to writing. I'm a late bird and an early bird. I go to bed late and I wake up early. And I just write, I wrote in between.
Well,
But
that
that was my frame of mind. And I definitely, when I write, I tell myself I had a schedule that I had to write at least 2,000 words a day. And that was 10,000 words a week. If I didn't do that, that means I couldn't have my Saturday and Sunday off. I wanted Saturday and Sunday off.
well, that's real discipline, and that's very, very impressive. So we will take a break, and when we return, we will discuss several of your works, Ms. Nortfleet, including one of your historical novels that is, as reviewed by Deep South Magazine, a beautifully woven commentary on race in America that is extremely relevant today. So the book is about co-eds who embark on a road trip to Spelman College a week before the semester begins, but their road trip will change their worlds forever.
Yes.
Deep South Magazine says. So we're going to talk about that. I think it is an excellent, very, very compelling read. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Come learn with us.
HCC, for everyone, anytime, anyway.
Welcome back to Credential Up Houston and our discussion with Ms. Celeste Nortfleet, American novelist. So, Ms. Nortfleet, you have written 35 novels, most of them romance, as you indicated. So I'm wondering, how did you make the leap to historical fiction?
Again, not intended. I basically fall into a lot of things that I do. I have a tendency to dream novels, and I'm talking the full novel beginning to end. And when I wrote my book, One Night in Georgia, I dreamt this novel from beginning to end. There were some tweaks, there were some differences, there were different characters in and out, but this was the full story. And when I dreamt this novel, I woke up crying because I just couldn't believe that this was in my head. I went into the office and I wrote a quick synopsis of everything I could remember. And surprising enough, I remembered a lot of it. I read it through, I added some more details that I remembered, and I started crying again because, first of all, this book is in me. It's my book, but it can't be my book because I write romance. my books end happily ever after. They can't end any other way in my mind. I knew I wanted to go into women's fiction. That was definitely a journey for me. I wanted to test the waters of women's fiction. I had already done young adult novels, and I loved doing that. I actually did a young adult novel with my daughter. It's called She Said, She Said.
Right.
But doing One Night in Georgia just wasn't me. So I put it away, and it just kept eating at me. I couldn't let it go. So I did a fuller synopsis. I sent it to my agent. She loved it. And she said, you need to write this. But I just didn't feel I was able to, because I write romance, but I needed to write this novel. It was important, and I needed to get it out.
So as you decided to go ahead and just get it out and to write this novel, what did you experience as the major differences in writing the romance versus writing the historical novel?
I'm a research junkie. I love to do research. It took me, I would say, at least 2 to 2.5 weeks to settle on a car. I went through every car from 1965 to 1968 to find the right car. I love doing research, but writing a historical threw me way into research. Writing now, I could write a contemporary because, we all live in this world right now. But in the 1960s, I had to learn a lot. I was born, but I was very young at that time. I immersed myself in the music, which really gave me the right vibe. I remembered that because when I wrote my young adult novels, I immersed myself in the youth culture. I listened to my sister, my daughters and her friends. I listened to their music, but now I had to listen to the music of the 60s. I had to research civil rights. And I went to the African American Museum, of course. It's right there in Washington, D.C. And to learn about the history all over again. So I really did deep research, definitely.
Yes, and so very, very interesting as you recount your experience in preparing to write this novel. And the places, the locations, they are locations that a lot of viewers will identify with. Young students on their way to Spelman College. They are now going to go to Martha's Vineyard. You have these young ladies who are together, they're friends, and they're taking this road trip. They're having this experience. Tell us about this storyline without giving away the end of the story. Tell us about it, please, to share with the viewers what we are talking about in terms of this story and how it plays out.
Okay, that's a toughie. Actually, it's not a toughie. It's just I have so much to say. Without giving too much away, we have 3 very different young ladies in and around the 20s. This is their last year in college, and they always said that they would have a road trip down to school. 2 of them are very into going. One is not so much because she's fearful. This is the 1960s, and she grew up knowing how bad it can be. So she eventually relents, and they go on this road trip. They first stop in Cape May, and they are confronted with some things that they didn't expect. And they continue on, this time with another passenger. A friend of her stepfather's has come to help, and his name is Daniel. This is Zelda's stepfather. So Zelda, Daphne, and Veronica, and now Daniel, are on their way to DC to meet up with Zelda's aunt and uncle, and then they're on their way down south. And the further south they go, the more troubles they come up with. There are some sporadic good things that happen, but all in all, it gets very dangerous. They eventually meet up in Georgia with another friend, Maisie, who is very wild and very young. And she basically starts an action that leads them into deep danger. One person is dead and another person is holding the gun.
Absolutely. Now, this is so compelling. It's so interesting. So what does your story say about naivete, vulnerability, and heroism in your estimation?
We can all be naive and we can all be heroes. Basically, you have to learn to step up, and you know what's right in your heart. You know what's right, and you have to step up. And heroes, there are a lot of heroes in this story. Some are surprising, but the heroes, the ones that are naive, they grow up quickly. The heroes step up. The ones that you wouldn't think are heroes, they step up. So the heroes are there, and that's the love part of it.
It really is. And there are so many lessons to be learned as well. I used to teach creative writing, African-American literature. I taught composition. And so I can see this leading to a lot of discoveries and thoughts, and that critical thinking being a part of the discussion as the students then start reflecting on their own lives and their experiences. So how did you select the locations, for example? I know that you had one young lady who was from a very affluent family, and
Yes.
so they spent some time at Martha's Vineyard. So tell us about that.
That would be the Veronica character. She is from money, and she's from old money. And at one point, she actually admits that her family owned slaves. Her family is, they live in New York, but they also live in Martha's Vineyard, and they travel there a lot. So she has to learn that everything isn't as bright and sunny as she's used to. So she has lessons that she learned the hard way.
Okay. And of course, there is Zelda. And Zelda has a story of her own to tell as well. But we're going to take another break. And when we return, we will discuss how you navigated through the publishing industry and great tips that you would like to share with our viewers, as well as contact information. So I'm going to ask you to please stay with us.
Come learn with us.
HCC, for everyone, anytime, anyway.
Welcome back to Credential Up Houston. We are continuing our discussion with an internationally acclaimed novelist, Ms. Celeste Nortfleet. Thank you so very, very much for being with us and sharing information that will inspire so many to tell their stories and to write. And I know that we want to go into a conversation about the publishing industry, but I'd like for you to first tell us about Zelda, who is quite different from the very affluent young lady in the story. So very briefly about Zelda and the message there. Zelda
comes from a little bit of money. Her family is deep in civil rights. Her father was killed by police officers in New York. She witnessed his death, and she has always been very fearful of what's coming next because she knows it's not good. But her journey teaches her that there are good people out there, and her journey teaches her that she is on the right path. And she can be brave, and there's people around her that will support her.
Absolutely. And I thought that was just a beautiful convergence also of all of what is going on in the story. And so with Spelman College, you selected Spelman for them as well, which of course was obviously, and still is for many, the go-to destination for the young ladies to go to college. But I want to move into some of what you learned that will help others. How did you go about acquiring an agent? Is an agent always necessary for beginning writers to get their works placed?
According to what you want, if you want to go the traditional publishing way, pretty much an agent is the way to go. Unfortunately, it's a catch-22. You have to have an agent to get a contract, but you have to have a contract to get an agent. So my way was a little different. As usual, I never did anything quite the right path. I joined an organization called WRW. And I met one of my best writer friends, Michelle Moncu, who was president at the time. She later became president of RWA. But Michelle was a wealth of information. Her and Candace Porch just walked me through so much when I first started. And don't be afraid, if you're going to want to go down the path of writing, don't be afraid to contact a writer and ask for advice. I always talk about giving advice. I always give advice. Just ask me. There's so many times that I've met people in the library or in a restaurant just to sit and talk, coffee shop, just to sit and talk about what I know and answer their questions. The way I got an agent was I went to a meeting at WRW. I went to a conference there. They had agents there. The agent was able to talk to you about your book, and they were able to decide whether or not the two of you could work together. I realized I knew what an agent was. I knew what they did, but I wasn't comfortable right then giving up all of my power just yet to publishing and to an agent to help me get this book done. But when I found the agent that was a comfortable fit for me, it was wonderful. And she and I have been together for years now, like almost 15 years now. So it worked well. She's retired now, but she still has me.
Yes. Oh, that is very, very good advice. And so you have begun to share some of the lessons that you learned. What are some of the other lessons learned that you know will benefit others who are beginning to write?
Faith. Have a lot of faith in yourself. Don't shortchange yourself. Be very confident in what you know and what you want to write. If it comes from the heart, then it is your book. Remember that it's your story. You control your story. You control what you want to say. Learn. Always learn. I've been writing for now, this is 2021. I've been writing now for over 20 years, and I'm still learning. I still go to the library. Now that libraries are closed somewhat, I still get books and learn what I can about the business. The business is changing. There's a lot of ebooks. There are a lot of self-pub. So I constantly learn. I go to different conferences. There's a conference that I go to all the time. It's romance writers. What is it called? Oh my goodness! I just went blank. I'll remember it. But I go to this conference all the time. Every year I go to this conference, and it helps me because the people that are there are professionals in the business, and they're able to give you their knowledge. I've actually been there and gone and helped them help others. So I've done classes, but if you want to be a writer, be confident, get out there, and don't be afraid. If someone says no, don't take it. You know what you have in your heart. You know the story that you want to write. Write your story.
Oh, that is excellent advice. And so some might think, oh my goodness, I'm going to try to edit while I write. And so they go back and they get stuck, or they might get writer's block. So how do you then have that flow? Do you free write and then you go back at some point and edit? Do you use that stream of consciousness in your writing? Do you use paper and pen, or do you use your desktop or your laptop to do the word processing? What are your responses to that, Celeste?
Romance Slam Jam was the conference I wanted to say. But my writing process is all over the place. I use pencil and pen. I'll use napkins. I'll use tissues. I'll use anything to write it down. I have my phone on record. I do the memos on my phone. I do that. But the thing is to write every day. When it comes to a writer's block, I sit down and I watch television. I watch different types of things. It gives me ideas in the flow of storytelling. So I watch television. When I'm writing romance, I do not read romance. When I'm writing women's fiction, I do not read women's fiction. I always read the opposite. So lately I've been reading bios because right now I'm writing both women's fiction and a romance novel. So I'm reading bios. So I don't have any problem focusing my attention on those two storylines. But the writing part is so important. Write, just write. If you have writer's block, it doesn't matter. Just start writing. Yeah, I type. I use my laptop. I use my on my iMac. I use everything. I get the words down, and the people are talking in your head, so you have to get them out of your head, and that's the way to do it, is to write it down.
And sometimes that can be a 24/7 process of getting them out of your head, because once you begin to write, then they're always there. And I've experienced that as well. So give us your contact information for those who would like to follow up with you.
Sure. My email is conorfleet@aol.com. And my website is celestenorfleet.com.
That is excellent. So any parting comments to the viewers in about 15 seconds?
Only to remember to write your story and to be true to yourself. Don't take no for an answer. Go write your story. It's out there. Write your story.
Wonderful. Ms. Celeste Nortfleet, thank you so much for joining us and for the great information that you shared with us today. The very best to you.
Thank
for
you.
Continued success, always. Absolutely. And I would also like to thank our viewers for watching. Go to hccs.edu/online for more information on creative writing courses. Meanwhile, as Ms. Nortfleet said, keep writing. So this has been Credential Up Houston. We will see you again next time. And keep in mind that wonderful book, One Night in Georgia. Ms. Nortfleet, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Indeed.